Welcome back to the FreightWaves Enterprise Fleet Summit. I'm John Kingston, editor-at-large at FreightWaves. The road to electrification in trucking seemed to be making significant momentum as little as a year ago. Of course, it was making a lot more progress in cars and smaller trucks than in 18-wheelers because of various hurdles would get with refueling a truck, carrying around the weight of the battery, and the high cost structure of hydrogen technology. But there were federal incentives under the Inflation Reduction Act, which was a Biden administration piece of legislation. And the industry, at least some segments of the industry, were giddy with excitement since that was passed. Everything has changed with the election of Donald Trump. Here to talk about is Jim Mullen. Jim is the executive director of the Clean Freight Coalition, but he's also a consultant, his own consulting firm. And in a past life, he ran the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration for a while, and he was also the chief legal counsel there as well. This came after several years at Werner Enterprises, so he's got trucking in his blood. Jim, welcome to the FreightWaves Fleet Enterprise Fleet Summit.
John, thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Why don't you first talk about the Clean Freight Coalition and what it does? I know it's got some fairly heavyweight members in terms of industry trade associations. Let's get that lay of the land out of the way to start.
Yeah, so the CFC was formed in the spring of 2022. The founding members were the American Trucking Association, the Truck and Engine Manufacturers Association, the Truck Dealers Association, TCA, Tank Truck Carriers, and the National Tank Truck Carriers. So those are the 5 founding members. We've since added some additional members. American Bus Association joined, the National Motor Freight Traffic Association joined, the Transport Project, National Association of Truck Stop Operators. So we've expanded our breadth, but we pretty much encompass the entire trucking ecosystem, so to speak. But in July of 2020, geez, I lose track of time. Yeah. I think it was 2022. EMA, we parted ways with EMA. So they are no longer a member. We coordinate with them and the OEMs on a number of things, but they're just no longer a member of the CFC. The reason why the CFC was
let me ask you, right about that time is when they signed the Clean Truck Partnership with the state of California. Was that one of the reasons for them going on their own way?
So that's interesting, John. So I remember the timing very well, although apparently not the year, but I remember the month and the dates. So we had a call, all the members had a call when EMA had decided to part ways. And the executive director of the EMA just wanted to say, hey, it's been a pleasure. And so we did that. And 2 days later, the Clean Truck Partnership was announced. So unbeknownst to us, they had been working on the CTP. So no, at least on our end, it had nothing to do with their departure. It might have something to do with it on their end, because as you may recall, the CTP caught not only the trade associations, but the fleets themselves off guard because the OEMs had kept a tight lid on that. And I guess I understand why. But so, yeah, no, that was not a division point for us for why they departed. You know, it's caused some angst since, but, you know, we still work with the EMA. We still work with the OEMs. And we're actually aligned on a lot of things now, which we'll talk about through our conversation, I'm sure.
Well, let's talk about your organization's sort of mission statement or a fundamental belief in the electrification of the trucking sector. Where do you see it going? Or do you not necessarily know where it's going, but you think maybe you don't want to get there all too quickly because the science isn't good, the technology isn't good yet? Where do you stand?
Right. So we were formed to do a couple things, John. One is to educate folks, not only regulators, lawmakers, but just, you know, people at large about all the progress that the industry has made. Right. I'm sure you're obviously very familiar with the numbers, you know, 60 trucks emitted in emissions back in the 80s is the equivalent of 1 today. We've eliminated 99% of particulate matter. And NOx. And so the trucking industry on its own has done a very good job of improving its emission footprint. So one was to educate. Two was to promote sound public policies that will support a transition to cleaner trucks, John, but it has to be affordable and sustainable, and it can't jeopardize the supply chain. So that's why we were formed. And I guess, you know, there's no point in hiding it. the regulatory environment that was in the making at the time that we formed, we felt was going to be problematic, both at the EPA level under the Biden administration and the CARB level. We thought that the standards that they were promulgating for regulation and the timelines by which those standards had to be achieved and the sales requirements, we just felt it was going to be unattainable. And a lot of the reason is because of the lack of the infrastructure to truly electrify the trucks at the pace at which both California and EPA were mandating. Along those lines as well, John, you talked about it earlier. The cost of the truck, 2.5 times what a diesel truck costs. You're losing payload because of the weight of the battery, the range of the truck. So we're not opposed as neither as the CFC nor the members for electrification. It was the timelines and the stringencies that are the problems, and so that's why we were formed. We did a study as well. We commissioned the Roland Berger consulting firm, an international consulting firm with a lot of experience in infrastructure and transportation, on what it would cost to electrify the country's medium and heavy duty trucks. And it's about $1 trillion. About 620 billion of that trillion would be borne by the fleets, the motor carriers, and the truck stop operators. About 370 billion of that would be borne by utility companies. And most of that's just to upgrade, right? This has nothing to do about producing additional capacity generation of additional electricity. That's just the utility with the upgrades for the utility infrastructure and, of course, the power state, the loading, the charging stations. So, the price tag is a huge price tag. And along those lines, John, we believe that there are more immediate solutions to improve the truck emissions in the environment that don't have that huge price tags and don't have the obstacles like the weight, the payload, and the range. I'm sure we'll talk about, RNG, biodiesel, those types of things, and just cleaner trucks, right? I mean, if you would incentivize fleets to refresh their fleet. So we have a lot of trucks out there that are still pre-2010. And if you would repeal, for instance, the federal excise tax, which is 12% tax on a new equipment, that would incentivize fleets. So even putting just the newer trucks with the cleaner technology, and by the way, safer technology on the roads, we think you'd actually be better off than going through this electrification process that the government has going on. So, some folks think that CFC is anti-electrification. No, that's not true at all. We're if it makes sense, cost-wise, and there's the infrastructure, yeah, we're all in.
Now, is it your view that the California laws, given that there were, I guess, what is the 16 states that had promised to align with California, does the California standard essentially become the national standard? Is that your view?
Well, it sure was, yeah. I mean, for two reasons. One, as you know, a fleet that runs nationwide, it's real hard to run half a fleet under these standards and half fleet under these standards. And then in addition, the OEMs, right? The OEMs, at some point in time, they're going to say, look, we're going to just adhere to the one standard. And that's always going to be the higher standard. So, yeah, we felt as if the EPA had essentially delegated authority to California.
All right. So let's put aside California for a minute. Let's assume for a minute the advanced clean trucks rule is dead, that the waiver that allowed it holds up in a court fight that California has undertaken. The advanced clean fleets rule does appear to be dead. It never did get a waiver, but California hints that they're going to come out with a modification. Let's just say they don't get to do that. What would you see as the state of, I won't just say electrification, but also clean fuels for trucking in 5 years or 10 years from now? I come out of the oil side. My concern with, let's say, renewable diesel is always that the supply of feedstocks just seems to be hanging on like a fairly narrow thread, which is, used vegetable, used cooking oil. I mean, there are other things too. But I just don't know if that's the most reliable supply line. So where do you see things in 5 or 10 years, absent any sort of strong mandate?
Right. So our mentality, John, is it's an all the above, utilization of these different power sources. RNG has great promise. A lot of fleets are using it. It seems to be increasing year over year. Incentives would be helpful. I mean, we're looking for a level playing field on the incentives, right? So you talked about the $7,500 battery electric incentive. That's very healthy incentive versus what the other fuel sources are. We think that with the rescission of the we call it a de facto battery electric mandate. That's essentially what it was going to be. We think with the rescission of that will actually help the promotion and increased penetration of RNG and other sources. Hydrogen isn't there yet, as you know, but RNG is cleaner than battery electric on the entire carbon life cycle. So it's actually better for the environment than battery electric. So we hope and believe that will continue to increase in production and utilization.
Let's spell out here, just in case somebody doesn't know. RNG stands for renewable natural gas.
Right.
And I
Sorry.
guess the primary source of it might be like, from a methane taken off a landfill, that kind of thing, right?
That's right. That's right. Yep. Yep. And there are a lot of fleets, large fleets, that are using RNG now. And biodiesel is a little more problematic because it has the added cost that for the system itself. But I know that there's some fleets running. Pepsi's running on biodiesel. Covenant just started testing biodiesel, and I know there's some others that are looking to do so as well. So I think there's some other alternatives out there. But by no means do I personally, nor the CFC, believe that that the rescission of these waivers is some sort of death knell for electrification. I mean, it's just not.
Yeah.
But we believe it's going to be, the market's going to dictate it a little more. And we think, so you mentioned 5-10 years from now. I mean, how many battery electric Class 8 trucks will we see in 5 to 10 years? I mean, that's really kind of hard to put a number to.
I mean, should we make a distinction between the Class 8 vehicles and sort of everything else, like a box truck, maybe a day cab, the kind of thing that I know, like CalStart, in the middle of everything that's been going on, put out their annual summary. Of course, CalStart is a very, kind of pro-electrification, pro-battery vehicle organization, but they put out some stats on the number of ZEV trucks that are out there. Yes, admittedly, the number of Class 8 trucks that were ZEV was very small, but in kind of like a box truck, kind of a regional delivery truck, their view was that they were making some sort of significant trends and significant progress. And one of the reasons is because, of course, the vehicles come back to base at night and they can be easily refueled.
Yep. And our opinion is we don't see any major decrease in the the additional units and usage of battery electric in that particular application, because it makes more sense in that particular application. And my personal opinion is, a lot of things follow the money, right, John? I mean, the amount of money that has been invested in that application is a tremendous amount of money, and I don't foresee that application is going to slow down very much. Where it's actually already been proven to have a rate of return that makes sense on your investment, and it works operationally. I don't see any reason in the world why that would not continue to increase, right? And those that say that the rescission of these waivers was foolish, and that it battery electric was more affordable, economical over time. Well, look, John, if that were true, then we would be much more advanced than we are, right? So, but if you, in the applications where it's already been proven that the ROI makes sense, operationally it makes sense, we believe it's just going to continue to proliferate. So that's great, right? And all we, again, to get kind of back to that primary purpose of our mission, was don't set us up for failure, right? Do not set the industry up for failure. And we felt that they had. So I don't see any decrease in additional adoption in that particular application. In the long haul, I would agree that it certainly didn't help the electrification for the long haul space because of the things we've already been talking about. RNG and others make more sense right now. And so what we believe is you'll see an increase in RNG and others, and battery electric will probably continue on the same pace it's on now, with a little larger increase, I suspect. But until they fix the range, until we get the infrastructure, until the cost parity, to me, it doesn't add up. the math doesn't pencil out, and there are better alternatives that are even in some respects, again, like RNG, where the carbon footprint is better than battery electric.
I got so many questions I want to ask you, but we are out of time. So anyway, Jim, I want to thank you. This is Jim Mullen. Jim Mullen is the executive director of the Clean Freight Coalition. He's also been around in this business a long time, and he knows about everything about regulations. So, Jim, thanks for joining us today at the Enterprise Fleet Summit.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it.
And I'm John Kingston. Stick around for more of FreightWaves Enterprise Fleet Summit.